ladies and gentlemen, over 2 full days and in 10 panel discussions in which we had an elite group of experts and specialists and strategic analysts and researchers and outstanding experts and decision makers and policy makers from the UAE and from all over the world. The ADSD Abu Dhabi Strategic Debate in its 10th edition discussed the strategic landscape at the regional and international levels with all its diverse topics and different and diverse and intermingled and interconnected aspects. To preserve your outstanding contributions, I will summarize in this statement the most prominent topics and trajectories that have been discussed in the 10th edition of ADSD. The ADSD, with the first day, started to envision the challenges that are facing security and stability and prosperity in the Middle East. And there's a call for working on a joint agenda to boost the efforts of de-escalation and not to give up on this objective. And there's been a reference to in the keynote speech to the fact that multilateralism is a very important part of the commitment of the UAE in its foreign policy. It is the element that has been quite clear in the experience of the UAE in the Security Council, and keenness on finding political solutions to crises. The more the conflicts rage on, the more complex it becomes for the international community to resolve it. It is quite important in the new age to stop adopting the containment policy only. We need to find root solutions and root cause solutions and integrate economic diplomacy with the political and security tracks in a comprehensive manner that would encompass for the Palestinian cause the issue of borders, Jerusalem, Eastern Jerusalem, and establishing a Palestinian state. In the first panel discussion, the UAE and COP28 towards a global perspective about facing climate change. The speakers focused on the COP28, which is hosted by the UAE within 2 weeks. And there's been consensus on the fact that climate change is no longer an issue that is limited to the environment only. It is associated with security, economy, and technology. And no single country can combat the climate change and the rising earth temperature on its own. There has to be a collective effort and multilateral efforts to meet these commitments and to take advanced steps in tackling the climate change issue. And the COP28 edition is very important because through it there will be global stock taking for the efforts exerted by countries, and that in terms of meeting the international climate agenda. This is very important because this creates momentum for everyone to shoulder responsibilities and to meet their commitments with regards to adaptation, filling the gaps, the Loss and Gaps Fund, and climate justice, and boosting governance and creating balance, and also achieving the objective of $1 trillion for global funding to combat the rising temperature of Earth or global warming, and also to engage the international community in achieving these objectives. And therefore, the ADSD in its second and third sessions, it started focusing on the more hot topic at the global arena now, which is the changing dynamics in the Middle East and the impact of the war in Gaza and there's been talk about the ethical failure of the liberal international system and the ramifications of this failure on the spread of extremism and radicalism and anger due to the double standards that are being dealing with the people's lives in a very marginal matter and human rights. And what happened on the 7th of October and the ensuing bloodshed afterwards presents an embodiment of long-standing conflicts that have been ignored by the international community in the Middle East.
قويا أيضا بتأثيرات الدور الإيراني المزعزع للاستقرار الإقليمي.
And this is a reminder of the influence of Iran and especially the destabilizing role of Iran. This reminded also all the parties in the Middle East that there can be no useful unilateral approach. There are several vulnerabilities that are linked with the Palestinian cause and the Iranian issue. The participants also talked about the superpowers, and they said that these superpowers should reconsider and review their policies with the different parties and stakeholders, especially given the continuous competitiveness between the superpowers. There was also recommendation of the necessity to establish a new system in the United Nations in order to be able to resolve the conflicts in the Middle East, and the possibility to dedicate position for the Arab world in the Security Council. And also the participants said that what happened in Gaza is not a separate event and things will never be the same after that. Some also wondered about the losers and the winners and whether the United States will manage this post-Gaza war or it will make things worse. Some also say that it is early to talk about any revival of the negotiations for peace, like offering initiatives like Madrid 2, Oslo 2, and there should be a focus on managing the current crisis and protecting the civilians in Palestine. Undoubtedly, the eruption of this conflict in Gaza added more strategic complications and complexities on the American strategy around the world. And this also weakens its focus on the competition with China or countering Russia in Ukraine. And this rivalry and this conflict represents a backlash for the American foreign policy, especially in its part of its presence in the Middle East, especially that it aimed to reduce its presence in the Middle East. And also the conflict in the Middle East creates several challenges for the Kremlin in managing the balance and equilibrium of its relations with different parts, especially Iran and Israel. And it was confirmed that there is a necessity to create hope for the Palestinians and to dismantle this problematic of the Palestinian issue through a comprehensive solution. Otherwise, the list of the losers will be long, especially among the Palestinians. And there is a scenario that is so dark, and the rebellion in Gaza, if it continues, that will be a very dark scenario. And we add that the Islamist fundamentalism will increase, and there are already indicators about this. and this can lead to more resentment among the Palestinians because of this new Nakba that is inflicted on them, and this will put their lives and their stability at risk. Also, Lebanon could become another post of conflict with Israel. This will lead to another layer of vulnerability and fragility. Therefore, there is a chance to end the war by giving an urgent solution, political solution, some hope, and taking the necessary and efficient steps and even audacious steps that include Gaza and the West Bank together. The engagement of the United States should be together with the regional and international influencers in order to draw a roadmap that could lead to the implementation of the two-state solution. This will lead to reducing the violence and extremism in the region. The fourth session talked about the war in Ukraine, and it discussed an important idea, which is the confrontation is not between Russia and Ukraine, but between Russia and the Western countries, and the confrontation of the interest through the military means. And of course, we know the nuclear component, the nuclear arms are catastrophic and disastrous if they are used. And with the war in Ukraine, the encampment and taking side started to become an issue, and alignment also became an issue. The national interests were raised more than ever, and also this enhanced the discussions about the risks of the alliances that are emerging, especially the alliance or the partnership between Russia and China, and their agreement on the way that they advocate in the international order and in managing the issues of the international order. And here there was the proposal of embracing a spirit of a multilateral international order rather than unilateral order. And also the fifth session talked about the diversity in the supply chains and also turning into cleaner energy and more governance, more transparency, and taking into account the dynamics that the economy is going through, the global economy is going through. Also, the participants say that there is an added value in the world, which is the change of the currencies that are representing the different economies, which means that we are going through a transition in the geo-economic situation. China has an important role in this regard, and there is distribution in the technology and the multiplicity in terms of how to use the artificial intelligence, automating several means, and using the digital technology, which will be the decisive factor in the global competitiveness. In the second day, we talked about the military compass in the world, the capabilities and the spread of power, and it was said that compared to the global trade, which reached $25 trillion, the total of the military expenses reached $2.25 trillion. And some of the participants in that session even said that the public figures about the military expansions are not realistic and not accurate. The global trend that was agreed upon by the majority of the participants make us conclude that there is a surge in the military expenses around the world. The Russian war in Ukraine even made the military expenses even more, and there is even more militarization of several economies. There is an increase in the military expenses in Asia also, and it is unlikely that we see a decrease in this military expenses in both continents in the short run. The discussion also tackled the importance of a compromise by the different stakeholders in order to fill the gap in cyber security, and also a compromise that would prevent attacking the critical facilities through the cyber attacks, and the importance to prevent any attack on those critical facilities, because by doing that, we will increase the global security and decrease the repercussions of the arms race and the non-proliferation. And regarding the Indo-Pacific, there was a session that discussed the reshaping of this regional reality. The participants mentioned that India regained its role as the country that is the most rapid economy, and it represents 5% of GDP, and also it has a great contribution in the global economy. The relation between China and India is very crucial in the Indo-Pacific, and the biggest challenge in the coming 10 years for India is how to make the foreign policy of India toward India, how the Chinese foreign policy will be with India, how this relation will be with the United States and its allies. And there was a discussion about the unipolar approach in Asia and the multipolar approach around the globe. And it was mentioned that Europe doesn't invest enough in the security of the Indo-Pacific. Still, the question that remains valid, and which will become more urgent in the coming years, is whether India will be pulled to the American strategy that aims to reshape the security structure of the Indo-Pacific, or it will retain a distance from the Chinese-American rivalry in the region. And also the participants in the 8th session about Africa, the prominent continent and the promising continent, they said that Africa recognizes that it has a lot of potentials in human resources and natural resources, and it wants to have a role in shaping the new era and to have an added value in the multipolar international system. And it was mentioned that there are inaccurate narratives about Africa, and that there is a change in the game and the rules of rivalry and competition, and we don't have to forget that Africa should serve itself in the first place, and to renovate itself through reforms, governance, developing the different laws and regulations, and enhancing security and stability. And in the 9th session about the future of the Gulf region, the discussion focused on the impact of the Gaza war on the positions of the Gulf countries and the increasing skepticism of these countries toward the Western countries with regard to their use of double standard. And also there was a discussion about the future trends of the Gulf countries. these Gulf countries try hard to diversify their partnerships and to disengage partially from the dependence on the United States and to have a diversity in partnerships. And the examples of that is the the ASEAN African Summit, the partnerships with China and other stakeholders in the world. And it is important for the Gulf countries to continue in this path to diversify the partnerships, continuing the path of investment in the defense industry, especially with this new rapprochement between Iran and the Gulf countries, and even with the gaps that still remain between Iran and the Gulf. Diplomacy, and especially the diplomatic economy, will serve the Gulf countries more, especially when dealing with Iran. The reduction and decrease of the conflict spots will help all the stakeholders in the Middle East. There should be a new consolidated narrative in the Gulf about their common interests. And in the last session, which was concluded a few minutes ago, it discussed the different realities of the energy transitions in the Middle East. And the speakers talked about a new crossroad in energy, and that the energy will remain important and crucial in this region and in the world. And the participants, when they discussed the geopolitics of energy transition, they said that this is a golden era for the Gulf countries to start a new era for the energy transition and keeping pace with the new trends in order to reduce the carbon print. And the Gulf region can be an international pole in storing the carbon and also in investing in the solar energy in addition to other renewables. However, there should be recognition that the traditional energy will remain for a long time, an energy that is depended on in the Middle East and the world, and the consumers will remain consuming this energy. And of course, with the complexities and complications at the geopolitical level, of course, this can impact the Gulf countries in this transition path. Ladies and gentlemen, that was, in a nutshell, the conclusions of what was discussed in the 10th Abu Dhabi strategic debate. Of course, we debated several topics that, of course, would help us understanding a bit the directions and the trends of the world. Also, this could contribute to helping us what are the policies that are going in the right direction and how to engage in these new realities and how to deal with the new realities. Of course, this helped us shed light on several angles and deepened our understanding of some topics and perspectives. At the end, I would like to thank deeply all the speakers, men and women, and I would like to thank all the attendees who participated actively with us through sharing their ideas, their opinions, and their perspectives. I would like also to thank the moderators who did their best in discussing and generating questions. And I would like also to thank all the invitees and the guests. I would like also to express my gratitude to His Excellency Anwar Gargash, the presidential diplomatic advisor of the UAE, who was with us yesterday. He honored us in delivering the opening speech. I would like also to thank all the representatives of the media outlets who covered the sessions of this debate. I would like at the end to express my pride and my appreciation for the staff of the Emirates Policy Center. These colleagues who started early to prepare for the logistics and for the technical side in order to make this debate a success. And I thank them all, and especially for bearing me and bearing my anger and my attitude sometime. I thank all those who helped us tremendously today and yesterday. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your interaction. And I hope that we meet again in the 11th Abu Dhabi strategic debate next year here in Abu Dhabi, the beautiful capital. Until then, I hope you enjoy your stay or the rest of your stay, and I hope the success for everyone. Thank you very much.
قليلا سنعرض عليك.
We'll share with you the summary of the sessions that we had in these 2 days.
سيبقى حريصا على تمكين المعرفة الرصينة ومراكمة الخبرة واستشراف المستقبل.
10 سنوات من
10 years of this ADSD edition.
Decade or so that to me are critical to take forward in the next 5 to 10 years.
Greater diplomatic and political engagement that's more balanced is a key to actually helping further these trends towards de-escalation.
And I hope we will go more and more toward sharing and facing common fates as a global level.
And my great concern is that for all of the renewed enthusiasm for the two-state solution,
summits and the OIC summits is all about to restore the trends that was calling for more regional integration and stability.
I would say giving preference of national interests over joining a camp. I think that is the pattern that I see.
To prevent chaos from developing into crisis is that first of all we have to respect each other.
10, 15 years ago, most trade was 70% transactions were made in US dollar.